Joining me here is the distinguished councilman out of the 6th Ward, all the way down south in Atlantic City. I know everyone's favorite playground here in the Garden State. It's the great Jesse O'Leary Kurtz. Join us right now here on Real Talk. Councilman, what's up?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. First and foremost, Councilman, I want to congratulate you for being on the Insider NJ Millennial Top 100 Power List. As someone who works with Insider NJ with my podcast with them on Thursday nights, it's always great to talk to people that Insider NJ recognizes, and certainly you're one of them. There's a lot to get to, so let me really dive right into it. It seems, Councilman, that the Democratic Party has had a stranglehold on a lot of parts of South Jersey, and more specifically Atlantic City, for as long as I can remember. And yet you continue to persevere as a Republican and as a conservative. How's that possible in AC?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you what, I'm born and raised here. Love being in Atlantic City. And my ward, while it has the smallest ratio between parties, we're still 3-1 Democrat to Republican in the voter registration. And I won my last 2 elections. I won 72% of the vote, and this last one in the higher 60s. And so I think it's evidence that you can run on issues and run hard, especially at the local level, and it'll resonate with people. I think that one of the things people everywhere in this state and in this area are looking for are solutions and a clear alternative, not just, as you're doing, not just critiquing, but actually pointing out an alternative. And I'd like to think that my electoral success here has been a part of that. And more so, I've actually had a chance to push some policy with folks who are from a different party, and we've actually been able to push good policy through here in Atlantic City.
Councilman, you know what? One of the things I take pride on with this program is asking the tough questions, but I'm fair also. It seems like Atlantic City has been a mess for as long as I can remember, and I'm sure it's a problem that certainly predates you in your time in office. Where does that reputation come from in terms of, why AC seems to still be not in the best of economic shape? And again, this is pre-COVID.
I'll tell you what I mean. There's a little bit of it in the background. We have a big history here, the Boardwalk Empire. I've got one of the old pictures of the skyline here. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of high-profile corruption cases over the years, and that's what people tend to think of us. And fundamentally, right, we're a small town in terms of space, but we deal with a huge budget and huge dynamics here, really big city dynamics. And I think it's that combination of things which has lent itself towards some of the corruption here over the years.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because, as we all know, AC has a very rich history, as you just alluded to, and it's really, the sort of go-to spot in South Jersey, if not all of Jersey, when it comes for gaming and entertainment. We know that has changed dramatically in the last, let's say, 10 to 15 years with other casinos and other sort of nightlife destination spots opening up. For example, by me up here in Hudson County, Empire Casino in Yonkers is 45 minutes away. I can go to Pennsylvania. I can go to, Mohegan Sun in Connecticut, which is also about maybe, 50, 55 minutes away. What is AC needing to do, you think, in the future to attract New Jerseyans to say, listen, we get it. There might be other spots to you closer on PA, up in, right in New York City, or even upstate New York or Connecticut. What can AC do to try to keep people in the state and keep the important dollars that go to keep Atlantic City flourishing?
Well, we were starting to take some steps in that direction right before COVID. And that was, giving people a full experience. All the other gaming jurisdictions you mentioned, while they have the core gambling product and they're starting to develop a little bit of the entertainment product, nobody matches what Atlantic City has to offer in terms of gaming, entertainment, and a full experience. We've recently redone a portion of our boardwalk where, believe it or not, next year you'll be able to come down when the weather's nicer and ride your bicycle or go for a walk on the boardwalk, which will be longer than it's ever been in our history. It's going to go from one end of town where Gardner's Basin is all the way to the border with Ventnor. So, we have these other complementing attractions, and I think that that's key. One thing that we need to do, and we need some state help with it, is there's been a huge growth of online gaming, people gambling, not only on sports, but also doing a slot machine and other games online, up your way without coming down to town. Well, we need the state's help to, implement something like a comp ratio, which requires more in-person visits, because, as a lot of people may not realize, the only reason why gambling was permitted here in Atlantic City, it was a statewide referendum, and it was designed to revitalize the town. So if the casinos are going to make money off the online gaming, we need to have a component that ties in and kind of encourages people to come here for the final round of a tournament, come here to cash in on comps, so that way not only our casinos, but also our supporting small businesses, our bars, our restaurants, and our stores here, as well as the world's famous boardwalk, all benefit, and really everyone wins.
Absolutely. Listen, that's well said, Councilman. You heard a little bit of my opening monologue. Certainly, the recent state budget was signed. And as you heard during my monologue, I'm not very happy, Councilman. I feel I covered a lot of points that represent, I think, the outrage by regular, everyday working class people in New Jersey. Am I wrong here?
No, I'll tell you what, the plight of the average person, of working people, cannot be overstated. We had, especially in my county, it was the only county to go over above 30% unemployment. My town was over 40% unemployment at one point during COVID. Even in the height of August, we were down, over 10% year over year. Those numbers really need to resonate, and they need to be reflected in a budget and a state that makes things more affordable for people, as opposed to just raising not only taxes, but ancillary costs. You mentioned the gas tax. But I would also point out the tolls. The toll roads are essential for Atlantic City to survive and to encourage people. If somebody has a decision between, as you put it, Connecticut or South Jersey, and they're in North Jersey, while tolls may not be the first thing in their mind, if it's a leaner decision, I don't want increased tolls to scare people away. And lastly, one of the points that I'm not sure you touched on, but that I'm not a big fan of with this budget, is the urgency on this part of state leadership to run towards debt. Debt should be something that is really avoided, it's shunned, and that we do everything not to take on additional debt, that we tighten the belt, as you were mentioning, but that we also figure out ways to make sure that debt goes towards capital expenses, things that we can touch and things that are tangible and that future generations will be able to enjoy. Debt shouldn't be going to a kick the can financial mentality where it's used to cover general operating costs in a given budget. I think that that's one of the fundamental sins of New Jersey in general, whether it's state, county, local, or even these independent authorities, is that there's such a intoxication with taking on debt, so that way there's these sugar high influxes of money that then you and I and our kids get saddled with. And it's the compounding impact of that year after year makes us less affordable and really less prospects even for our recent college grads to pursue their futures here in the Garden State.
Councilman, you hit the nail on the head there. And it's something I've been harping on this program since its premiere on June 1st. Is the fact that Trenton just cannot spend responsibly, and it just seems to be, not budgeting in a way that makes any sense. Again, if we ran our households, Councilman, the way that Trenton runs the budget down there, I'll tell you right now, I think half the state people would get up their homes. People be on the street. It's amazing to me that more and more New Jersey, residents and voters alike aren't expressing more outrage. It's not enough. Listen, it's not enough just to get on social media and have tantrums and post things. No, it's about mobilizing. It seems like New Jerseyans are, again, I think there's such a large amount of apathy here when it comes to Trenton and our legislature. And again, I don't want to just pick on Governor Murphy, because this is a problem that predates Governor Murphy. I'm sure, listen, during the 8 years of Chris Christie, during the 4 years of John Corzine, and so on and so forth, it seems like the governor's office does have a hand in what's going on with the budget, but at the end of the day, it's the legislature. And by the way, for the last 20 years, both chambers are controlled by Democrats, and not, fiscally responsible Democrats, but a lot of these like super progressive or woke Democrats, which drive me crazy, because it seems like, feel-good projects and their ivory tower mentality when it comes to economics doesn't resonate with everyday New Jerseyans. Well,
and one of the things that, actually, I'll give you two quick examples. And, I think even for the sake of, they're the same party, I think for the sake of self-respect, if I were in the legislature, I would be pushing to put a check on this ability to keep on doing emergency declarations. I think we're up to the 7th renewal or the 7th declaration extension. People run for office and get elected by people to represent them. And there's a certain dignity to that. And I think that the emergency declaration after the first one needs to go to the legislature, and more rules, more rules that are done out of the executive need to go to the legislature. And I think that that's a bipartisan issue. I think that that's something that Democrats who do control the legislature should take more of an interest in. So that way, for their own self-respect, to show that. And the second point is, restaurants. I've really immersed myself in what it takes to run a restaurant during these COVID times. And I'm a computer guy by trade, so it was definitely a learning experience. And this whole 25% capacity on indoor dining is horrible. It is absolutely horrible. And locally, it's already shutting down certain restaurants. And as the weather gets colder, despite great ingenuity and creativity from our restaurants in doing outdoor space and transforming it to like a really neat experience, you can't do that when it's 50 degrees out. I mean, you're not going to bundle up in a parka and put thick gloves on to enjoy your steak outside. Like, it's just not practical. We need to give our restaurants an opportunity. And at 50%, I don't even know that everybody can survive at that, but it's certainly better than 25%. It's what other states are doing. And that's why myself and others, we're really sounding the clarion call that we need people to stand up, legislature, municipal governing bodies, counties, and just tell the governor, like, hey, enough's enough. It's really time to go to at least 50% on this indoor dining capacity, and to do so as soon as possible.
I agree with you, Councilman. And up here where I live in Hudson County, I mean, I'm fortunate enough to have a lot of venues that are right on the water overlooking New York City. And a lot of these venues, as you mentioned before, are creative. They have a lot of heaters. You can be outside, have dinner. But not every restaurant and not every venue in New Jersey has that option. And certainly, listen, you're right. 25% is not a percentage that's going to help a lot of these businesses, resuscitate themselves, even at 50%. So that leads me to my next question. We know the governor has taken a lot of heat during COVID, especially in recent weeks, where it seems like the curve was flattening out. And I've had legislators here, both Democrats and Republicans at the state level, talk about the governor maybe being way too punitive when it comes to these executive orders you mentioned that I know many of us are just tired of, but also opening up the state quicker. It just seems that, hey, the New Jersey economy isn't prospering like Florida and Texas. Well, I think there's one dynamic there that should be very obvious to everybody. These governors are much more proactive in opening the state.
Well, and it's both the focus on the governor, but I'd actually argue that like what we're in need of is a strong dose of regionalism. We need, again, people through the legislature to assert themselves and say, look, this can't be this top-down, one person and their close advisors make all these decisions that are life or death, at least economically, for people around the state. I mean, we have a beautiful state. I love my area the best. I'm sorry, Fernando. I mean, Atlantic City's the best. But there's, you have the Northwestern Mountains. Your area is more urban, and there's a lot more of a density there. But then if you go to the south, we've got farmland and we have everything in between. Our state is diverse enough that it requires, the ability to let loose of a little power from the top and put it into something like regional councils. I mean, if you have different areas of the state, whether it's south, central, and north, and no, I'm not going to debate you here as to what the boundaries of central Jersey are, but if you take regional areas, I think that there's certain things, like in my district, right, like my area, the hospitality industry is essential. And I'd argue it's more important here than just about any other area of the state, because that's our big industry. So like for us, the indoor capacity on dining and drinking is more of a life and death issue than in an area where, let's say, Lawrenceville and the pharmaceuticals, or Princeton with higher ed or something like, and we need an approach that allows things that, of course, we want to be safe, we want to be smart, but we can walk straight and chew gum, and people can have food on the table. People can be able to survive economically while we try to get through this difficult time with the virus. And I think a key point in that is, and it doesn't matter how good a governor is, it's one person, and it's human nature, right? Like, we're all flawed. And that's why power should be dispersed. There should be checks and balances on powers. There should be a strength in institutions. And I think a regional approach to future virus situations is one of, if nobody's learning that lesson from here, then I don't know if there's any hope for them.
Councilman, you're absolutely right on that. And it's something to keep an eye on as we continue with these cold months ahead. I know, again, by me in Hudson County, a lot of the hospitality industry and restaurants and so forth, nightlife, they're going to take a hit again. It's as simple as that. It's going to get colder soon. I love the autumn weather, but again, as you said, being outside and having dinner could be problematic, whether it's up here by me overlooking New York City or down by you all the way in AC. Councilman, let me pick your brain politically here. It's about 21 days approximately until Election Day and counting. And it's safe to say that the 14 electoral votes here in New Jersey seem safe for Joe Biden because of a lot of the big clusters of urban, Democratic machines in the state, which include Jersey City, Newark, Patterson, Trenton, Elizabeth, Camden, other parts. It seems like the Democratic machines in those areas will get the vote out for Joe Biden. But I don't see a lot of enthusiasm for Joe Biden. I don't see Joe Biden signs a lot anywhere up by me in Central Jersey, where I've gone lately. I haven't seen bumper stickers. I mean, I might see commercials, but I don't see. Listen, just do a test. Go on your Facebook. Go on Donald Trump's page and check out which of your friends like that page and compare it to the Joe Biden one. And I can tell you right now, I mean, it's almost like 4-1 on my Facebook page. And I know a lot of people in New Jersey probably feel the same. What are your thoughts leading up to Election Day?
Sure. I mean, I'll tell you, Joe Biden's just not an exciting candidate, and that's by design, right? That's actually why he won the primary on the other side, is he was more of the safe candidate. And you have a lot of friends who are, in the Democrat side and are not supporting Trump, and we talk, and there's no doubt about it. There's very, very little enthusiasm for him. There are a bunch of people down here in South Jersey that had personal interactions with him because of how close Delaware is to South Jersey. And so, they have nice anecdotal stories to tell about him, but he's not exciting, right? Like more of a progressive candidate would have been exciting and would have excited the Democrat base when it comes to this election. Now, I think really what to keep our eyes on that's going to be interesting are going to be the congressional races.
That's right.
And the one race here in District 2 is going to be a real test as to whether or not a place like Cumberland County, which kind of represents the new Trump coalition, where you have a lot of former manufacturing, blue collar, farm workers, a heavy Latino presence, and the Puerto Rican governor was somebody that recently endorsed the president. And there are local Puerto Rican leaders that are endorsing him. Will not only Trump, but will Congressman Van Drew carry Cumberland County is going to be one of those questions I'd urge you and people watching this to keep an eye on. And District 2 wise, I mean, that's going to be a very interesting race to watch. And I think Van Drew is going to pull it out. If you're asking for a kind of a prediction, I think it's going to be a close race against Amy Kennedy. But I do see him pulling it out based on the dynamics of this district. And last thing in terms of observing is that you can't just look at voter history anymore and say, all right, all these people voted Republican, they're going to vote Republican again. Because you see a lot of like the suburban vote people who are no longer voting Republican because they don't really like Trump. But you see in that too on the other side, like a lot of Democrat-leaning public sector, like law enforcement unions are going with Trump. You have a lot of people, I call them the Hindu nationalists, people who are from India and South Asia who really love Prime Minister Modi, and Prime Minister Modi loves President Trump. And so there's these shifting electoral dynamics which make it for people like us that love this stuff to watch and observe. It's a very fascinating election to watch. I'll be interested to see what the results are. But in the meantime, New Jersey, we're a state worth fighting for. It's a beautiful place. And I do think whatever the outcome, we're going to see some seeds of hope going into next year to try and reclaim some of our freedoms, rebuild a stronger economy, and learn lessons from this, especially about the lessons of power and the need to disperse it and put checks and balances on it.
Absolutely right, Councilman. And before I let you go, certainly, you have a great reputation down by you. And certainly you've been an exceptional public servant on the Atlantic City Council. It begs the question, since you bring up 2021, any thoughts of running for a legislative seat down by you? Are you pleased with your representation, or do you feel maybe this is like the next logical jump for you, since you're already a councilman, perhaps maybe ascending to the state legislature is something that might interest you in 2021?
I'll tell you what, I'm going to have to capture that question in case something does happen and pay a royalty or something. That's joking. I'll tell you what, it's been such a great honor to be councilman here. It was one of my really goals and dreams growing up was to be involved in local government. And so I really love being councilman. One of the things here, and people know that the state has taken over Atlantic City. And so there is a lot of state authority and policy that's intertwined with things. So to answer part of your question, I'm absolutely frustrated with the lack of a voice for Atlantic City in the state legislature, especially with our legislative delegation, namely the Assembly people. They win on the strength of Atlantic City voters, and you rarely hear them talking about Atlantic City and things like the pilot bill and how it affects families and small businesses, how the takeover really diminishes our constitutional rights. And so it's something that, whether it's that or just continuing to advocate state issues as a councilman, you're going to hear more and more from me about how these state dynamics, I'd argue, are crushing our town, and how we need some more respect and just acknowledgement at the state level here in Atlantic City.
Well, Councilman, I know I speak for many of my viewers today. We hope you take that leap next year. We'll see. And if you do, I'll be one of the people that called it here on the program, one of my spoiler alerts. So, Councilman, again, thank you so much for joining us here. Certainly, we appreciate your time. Keep up the great work on the City Council in Atlantic City. And I hope to see you soon. And once again, tell everybody how much you love Real Talk here with Eyes on NJ.
Hey, you got it. Thanks a lot for the time, the opportunity. And next time you're in AC, we got to grab a drink or something.
We'll grab a drink and a cigar, Councilman, okay? I'll talk to you soon. And thanks again for being on the program.
Hey, you got it. Have a good night.
You too. Folks, I'll tell you, a great interview there with the distinguished councilman out of the 6th Ward in Atlantic City, Jesse O'Leary Kurtz, again, recently mentioned on the Insider NJ Millennials Top 100 Power List. And of course, those are the type of exclusive guests that I continue to get you here every week on Real Talk.